5 minutes ago, a royal command was issued behind palace doors, and 5 minutes ago, Princess Beatrice did something no senior royal has dared to do in decades. She refused. No hesitation, no negotiation, no compromise. What followed wasn't quiet disappointment, it was panic. Phones rang. Advisors scrambled. And for the first time in years, the palace realized something terrifying. Control was slipping. The directive had been prepared in secrecy, drafted with careful language and sealed with the kind of urgency reserved for moments of institutional survival. It was not presented as a request. It was framed as duty, as legacy, as obligation. Those who delivered it believed compliance was guaranteed, because within royal walls, commands are rarely questioned, they are absorbed, carried, executed without tremor. But this time was different. This time, the silence that followed the reading of the order was not submission. It was resistance. The stakes were unmistakable. The command was tied to a decision that would shape public perception, reinforce alliances, and protect reputations at the highest level. It was described internally as non-negotiable, a phrase that signaled both urgency and warning. The monarchy was navigating fragile ground, and unity was essential. Or at least, that was the narrative. Compliance would have signaled stability. Refusal would expose fracture. And when Princess Beatrice looked up and calmly declined, the illusion of effortless control shattered. Those present expected hesitation, a request for clarification, perhaps even quiet discomfort. Instead, they were met with certainty. Her tone was steady, not emotional, firm, not defiant. She did not raise her voice. She did not dramatize her stance. She simply said no, and in that single word was a boundary the palace had not prepared for. Senior aides, accustomed to managing optics and smoothing dissent before it formed, found themselves caught off guard. The room shifted. Power recalibrated. Within minutes, whispers began traveling through corridors lined with tradition. This was not supposed to happen. Not now. Not from her. Advisors moved quickly, attempting to reframe the moment as misunderstanding rather than defiance. Calls were placed to senior figures. Contingency plans were pulled from drawers long untouched. The underlying fear was not just about one princess rejecting one directive, it was about precedent. If one could refuse, others might question. And if questioning became visible, the carefully constructed image of unity could unravel. What makes this refusal more dangerous than it appears is not the act itself, but the timing. The monarchy is balancing perception and pressure, loyalty and modernization. A refusal in stable times is a private disagreement. A refusal in fragile times becomes a statement. And this one carried weight far beyond its words. Because behind Beatrice's calm rejection lies something deeper, tension that did not begin today and will not end tonight. But to understand why her refusal sent shockwaves through the monarchy, we have to go back to the hidden tensions that had been quietly building long before today. For months, perhaps even years, Princess Beatrice had been walking a tightrope between loyalty and identity, smiling in public, nodding at private meetings, playing her role. But behind closed doors, insiders now claimed something was shifting. A frustration, a boundary, a line she was no longer willing to cross. Today's refusal wasn't sudden. It was the eruption of something long suppressed. Long before the command landed on her desk, the pressure had been quietly tightening. She had become what palace strategists privately called a bridge figure, someone positioned carefully between generations, between scandal and stability, between tradition and the modern world, watching closely. It sounded flattering. It was anything but. Being a bridge meant absorbing weight from both sides. It meant smoothing tensions that were never hers to begin with. And over time, that burden began to settle deeper than anyone realized. As instability crept into the institution's subtle disagreements, shifting alliances, unspoken rivalries, the expectation grew that Beatrice would step forward. More visibility, more statements, more symbolic gestures of unity. She was to embody reassurance without demanding authority, to represent continuity without challenging hierarchy. It was a delicate choreography, and she performed it flawlessly in public. But perfection has a cost. And the cost was personal. Behind polite compliance was a woman wrestling with her own sense of autonomy. Loyalty to family is not a choice in the monarchy, it is inherited. Yet personal conviction cannot be silenced forever. Each time she was asked to endorse a narrative she didn't fully believe in, a quiet fracture formed. Each time her role was defined for her without consultation, another thread of patience wore thin. She was expected to modernize the image of the crown while never questioning the machinery behind it. That contradiction did not go unnoticed by her, even if it was ignored by those above her. There had been signs. Small, almost invisible moments where she subtly redirected conversations or declined to amplify certain initiatives. A postponed appearance framed as scheduling conflict. A carefully worded statement that avoided full endorsement. Insiders now look back at those instances not as coincidence, but as controlled resistance. She was testing boundaries, measuring how far she could stand within the system without openly confronting it. But tension, when left unaddressed, does not disappear. It accumulates, and those closest to the inner circle sensed that a breaking point was approaching. Not explosive, not theatrical, just inevitable. Because when identity is repeatedly placed beneath obligation, something has to give. Beatrice was not seeking rebellion. She was seeking alignment between what she represented publicly and what she could live with privately. That alignment had been denied for too long. So when the directive arrived, heavy with expectation and framed as unquestionable, it collided not with obedience, but with years of internal negotiation. The palace believed it was issuing a routine command to a dependable royal. In reality, it was pressing against a boundary that had already hardened. What happened next was not impulsive. It was calculated clarity, born from prolonged restraint. And when the command finally came, it wasn't just about duty, it was about something far more personal. The order itself was strategic. Calculated. Designed to protect the crown at all costs. But when it reached Princess Beatrice, something in her snapped. This wasn't a routine engagement. It wasn't ceremonial. It was political. And complying would have forced her to publicly endorse a decision that insiders say she fundamentally opposed. On paper, the directive was simple. Appear. Stand beside. Offer visible support. Deliver a carefully drafted message reinforcing unity. Yet beneath those polite instructions was a deeper objective to present a seamless front at a moment when cracks were threatening to show. It was, in essence, a loyalty test disguised as responsibility. The palace needed her presence not for tradition, but for validation. Her participation would silence questions. Her absence would invite them. The implications were enormous. Media narratives were already delicate, and a single image can stabilize or destabilize months of strategy. By stepping forward, she would be lending credibility to a course of action she had privately challenged. She understood the machinery. She knew how symbolism works. A smile can rewrite controversy. A speech can redirect headlines. And this time she was being asked to become the shield. But the direction the palace had chosen was one she had wrestled with in silence. Insiders whisper that she had warned against it gently at first, then more firmly. She believed the strategy was short-sighted, built to extinguish a fire rather than address the spark. She feared it would sacrifice long-term trust for short-term relief. And more than anything, she refused to be the face of something she did not believe in. The tension between obedience and conviction had been simmering for months. This command forced it into the open. When the conversation escalated, it did so quietly but intensely. Senior authority reminded her of legacy, of duty, of the weight of the family name. There were no raised voices, only sharpened words. She was told that unity was paramount. That personal opinion must bow to institutional survival. That history would remember who stood firm and who faltered. The implication was clear, compliance was expected, resistance would be noted. And then came the moment that altered everything. She did not argue. She did not dramatize. She listened. She held her ground, and with a steadiness that stunned those present, she delivered 4 words that rippled through the room like thunder disguised as calm: "I will not." There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. And certainty, in that environment, is more dangerous than rebellion. Because rebellion can be dismissed as emotion. Certainty demands acknowledgement. The silence that followed was heavier than confrontation. Officials exchanged glances. Advisors recalculated. In an institution where directives flow downward and obedience flows back, the circuit had just been broken. The fallout was immediate. Emergency briefings were called. Alternative plans were drafted at speed. Some argued she could still be persuaded. Others warned that pushing harder would only deepen the fracture. The question was no longer how to enforce compliance, it was how to prevent the perception of division from escaping those walls. But what truly terrified palace leadership wasn't the refusal itself, it was what it signaled. Within minutes of her refusal, emergency calls were placed. Advisors gathered. Contingency plans were activated. The phrase whispered most often in those first frantic moments? This cannot get out. Because if it did, it wouldn't just look like defiance, it would look like division. The atmosphere shifted from controlled authority to quiet alarm. Senior aides who had long prided themselves on anticipating every scenario suddenly found themselves reacting instead of directing. Messages were relayed through secure channels. Private secretaries moved swiftly between offices. The carefully maintained rhythm of palace order was replaced by something sharper, urgency edged with fear. The issue was no longer persuading Princess Beatrice. It was containing the narrative before it could grow teeth. The first concern was leakage. In an institution where whispers travel faster than official statements, even a hint of dissent could ignite speculation. Who else had been present? Who might talk? Could a frustrated aide share a careless word? Every possibility was weighed. Every vulnerability examined. The monarchy survives on perception, and perception thrives on secrecy. If this story reached the press without preparation, it would not be framed as principled disagreement. It would be framed as fracture. The communications team worked at speed, drafting alternate explanations for a potential absence, reshaping upcoming schedules, creating fallback appearances to redirect attention. Language was dissected with surgical precision. No mention of refusal. No acknowledgement of tension. Just subtle rearrangements designed to preserve the illusion of seamless unity. Yet beneath the strategic phrasing was an uncomfortable truth. This was damage control, not leadership. Fear of precedent loomed larger than any headline. If Princess Beatrice could openly decline a directive and remain standing, what message would that send to others navigating private doubts? The monarchy functions on hierarchy. Commands move downward. Loyalty flows upward. That structure had just been tested. And tests, once survived, become templates. Some advisors argued that firmness was essential, a visible consequence to discourage repetition. Others warned that punishment would escalate the crisis and risk pushing internal disagreements into public confrontation. The debate grew tense. Discipline her and risk appearing heavy-handed. Negotiate and risk appearing weak. Every option carried danger. Meanwhile, external pressures were already high. Public trust was fragile. Media scrutiny relentless. The timing could not have been worse. A misstep now could ripple outward, amplifying doubts about stability at the very top. Yet amid the scrambling, amid the whispered strategies and urgent recalculations, one fact remained immovable. Princess Beatrice had not withdrawn her position. She had not requested reconsideration. She had not signaled regret. The more the palace attempted to manage the fallout, the clearer it became that this was not a moment of emotional impulse. It was a deliberate stand. And while the palace scrambled to contain the fallout, Beatrice stood her ground, calm, resolute, and unwilling to bend. This wasn't rebellion for attention. It wasn't emotional impulse. According to insiders, Princess Beatrice knew exactly what she was risking. Reputation, access, influence, even future standing within the royal structure. And yet she chose refusal. Why? Because for her, this moment wasn't about protocol, it was about principle. For years, she had understood the silent contract of royalty. Privilege in exchange for loyalty. Visibility in exchange for restraint. The crown gives status, but it also demands surrender of opinion, of preference, of personal truth. Beatrice had honored that contract faithfully. She had shown up when required. She had supported when asked. She had protected the institution even when it offered little protection in return. But there comes a point when compliance begins to feel like erasure, and insiders suggest she had reached that point long before this directive arrived. Her decision was not born in anger. It was born in reflection. Those close to her describe long private conversations about identity and responsibility about what it means to serve without losing oneself. She had questioned whether loyalty must always mean silence, whether unity must always mean agreement. In a monarchy built on hierarchy, these questions are dangerous. They challenge not just decisions, but foundations. And yet she could not ignore them. The emotional toll of challenging authority within her own family was immense. This was not a corporate dispute or political rivalry. This was blood, history. Generations of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. To say no was to risk being labeled difficult, unreliable, disloyal. It meant stepping into uncertainty without knowing who would stand beside her once the dust settled. The weight of that possibility was heavy, but so was the cost of surrendering her conviction. Surprisingly, not all reactions within the family were hostile. Whispers suggest that support emerged from unexpected corners, quiet words of understanding, subtle gestures that signaled empathy rather than condemnation. Not everyone believed obedience should be automatic. Not everyone agreed with the palace's chosen direction. Yet that support was discreet, careful not to ignite further instability. Sympathy existed, but open alignment was another matter entirely. At the same time, tension simmered with those who demanded conformity. To them, her refusal was not principled, it was disruptive. They viewed unity as survival, and survival as non-negotiable. Every challenge, however thoughtful, risked weakening the structure. The divide was subtle but growing. Conviction versus compliance, evolution versus preservation. And Beatrice, whether she intended to or not, had stepped directly into the center of that fault line. What makes her stand so powerful is not volume but clarity. She did not threaten. She did not campaign. She simply refused to lend her voice to something she believed was wrong. In an institution where silence often equals safety, that clarity felt almost revolutionary. And revolutions, even quiet ones, rarely end without consequence. But as whispers began circulating beyond palace walls, the crisis moved from private confrontation to public threat. The palace feared one thing above all: exposure. And then it happened. A subtle shift in media coverage. A cryptic headline. A reporter asking the wrong question at the wrong time. Suddenly, what was meant to remain buried behind velvet curtains was inching toward the spotlight. It began quietly. A political correspondent hinted at unexpected internal tension during a late-night broadcast. A digital outlet ran a carefully worded piece about last-minute royal schedule changes. No accusations, no direct claims, just enough ambiguity to ignite curiosity. Within hours, speculation began to breathe on its own. The timing felt suspiciously precise, as if someone, somewhere, had chosen their moment carefully. Inside the palace, suspicion spread faster than confirmation. Who had spoken? Was it deliberate or careless? Had an aide vented frustration to the wrong person? Or was this something more strategic, a calculated leak designed to force negotiation? Every possibility was examined. Trust, once assumed, became fragile. Meetings were called not just to manage the narrative, but to identify the fracture within. The greatest fear was not the initial headline. It was momentum. Stories, once seeded, evolve. A single question can turn into a theory. A theory can morph into assumed truth. Advisors understood the rhythm of modern media. The more silence they offered, the louder the speculation would grow. Yet speaking too soon risked confirming what they desperately wanted to deny. It was a trap of timing. React too fast and appear defensive. React too slow and lose control. Meanwhile, social media erupted. Hashtags emerged within hours, framing the situation as courageous defiance rather than reckless disobedience. Commentators debated whether Princess Beatrice's refusal signaled strength or instability. The public, often skeptical of rigid hierarchy, seemed intrigued. Some praised her for standing firm. Others questioned what had driven such a dramatic break from tradition. The narrative was slipping from institutional hands into the unpredictable court of public opinion. What unsettled palace leadership most was the shift in sympathy. For years, unity had been the selling point. Stability had been the shield. But now, Many outside those walls appeared drawn to the idea of a royal who dared to say no. The contrast was stark: an ancient institution demanding loyalty, and a modern audience applauding autonomy. That contrast carried power, and power, once transferred to the public sphere, is difficult to reclaim. In response, the palace moved with calculated restraint. Official statements were softened but firm, emphasizing continuity and shared values. Appearances were adjusted to project cohesion. Trusted commentators were quietly briefed to redirect the conversation toward broader royal initiatives. The strategy was subtle: dilute the controversy rather than confront it directly. Control the temperature. Avoid escalation. But beneath the polished language and strategic scheduling, a harsher reality lingered. The leak had done more than expose a disagreement. It had revealed vulnerability. The crown, long perceived as unshakable, now appeared human, and humanity invites scrutiny. Each attempt to stabilize the narrative felt like a temporary fix rather than resolution. And as speculation intensified and public curiosity sharpened, one truth became impossible to ignore. But the deeper truth is, this wasn't just about one refusal, it was about a monarchy confronting its own fragility. For centuries, royal commands have been obeyed without question. Today, that illusion fractured. Princess Beatrice's defiance didn't just disrupt a plan, it exposed the uncomfortable reality that unity inside the monarchy may be far more fragile than the public believes. The institution has always relied on a simple, unspoken rule: orders flow downward and loyalty flows back up. That rhythm has sustained crowns, weathered scandals, and preserved hierarchy through generations of turbulence. Compliance was never merely tradition. It was survival. To obey was to strengthen the structure. To hesitate was to threaten it. And yet, in one calm refusal, that structure felt something unfamiliar: resistance from within. The symbolic weight of her decision cannot be overstated. This was not a public protest or theatrical rebellion. It was controlled, measured, intentional. And that is precisely why it carried such force. When defiance is loud, it can be dismissed as drama. When it is quiet and certain, it becomes ideology. Princess Beatrice did not just reject a directive, she challenged the assumption that obedience is automatic. That challenge rippled far beyond a single meeting room. At the heart of this moment lies a generational tension that has been simmering beneath polished appearances. The monarchy stands at a crossroads between preservation and evolution. Senior figures often see stability and tradition in hierarchy that is firm, predictable, unquestioned. Younger voices, shaped by a world that prizes transparency and individuality, see strength in adaptation. Beatrice's refusal became the flashpoint where those philosophies collided. It was no longer theoretical. It was personal. The debate inside palace walls grew sharper. Some argued that modernization must have limits, that too much autonomy risks unraveling the very fabric that binds the institution. Others quietly acknowledged that rigid authority may alienate the very generation meant to carry the monarchy forward. The question was no longer whether unity should exist. It was what kind of unity could survive the present era: enforced compliance or chosen alignment. Perhaps the most unsettling consequence was the fear of emboldenment. If one royal can draw a boundary and remain standing, others might begin to reconsider their own silent compromises. The structure depends on predictability. Uncertainty breeds momentum. Leadership understood this instinctively. What they faced was not merely dissent, but the possibility of a cultural shift from obedience to negotiation. Internally, authority itself came under quiet examination. Not publicly, not formally, but in guarded conversations that questioned whether command alone is enough to command respect. Strength, after all, is not proven by silence, but by how it responds to challenge. And in this moment, the monarchy was being tested not by external critics, but by one of its own. The fracture may not be visible to the public in full detail, but its echo is unmistakable. The crown remains intact, yet something intangible has shifted. The illusion of unquestioned compliance has cracked, and once cracked, it cannot simply be restored with ceremony. And as tensions escalated, one final confrontation loomed, one that could redefine Beatrice's future entirely. Late into the evening, doors closed. No press, no aides, just power facing resistance. This was the moment the palace hoped would end the standoff. A final appeal, a reminder of duty, but insiders say Princess Beatrice did not waver. If anything, her resolve only strengthened. The conversation was described as measured at first, almost reflective. Senior authority began not with accusation, but with history. Generations invoked, sacrifices remembered. The crown, they argued, had survived because individuals placed institution above impulse. Loyalty was not optional, it was inherited. Every royal before her had faced moments of discomfort, yet they had chosen unity. The implication hung heavily in the air. Would she be the exception? Beatrice listened. She did not interrupt. She did not flinch. But those familiar with her demeanor noticed something subtle, not defiance, not anger, but clarity. The appeal to legacy, once a powerful tool, no longer carried automatic influence. She respected the past. She understood the weight of the name she carried. But respect, she believed, should not require silence when conscience is at stake. As the discussion deepened, the tone sharpened. The language shifted from persuasion to caution. There were no overt threats, but the warnings were unmistakable. Consequences were mentioned in careful phrasing: reduced visibility, diminished influence, strategic distancing. The system had mechanisms for maintaining order. The message was clear: stepping out of line carries cost. Yet what stunned those present was not her reaction, it was her composure. She did not match intensity with intensity. She responded quietly, almost gently, reaffirming her position. She spoke of integrity, of alignment, of the danger in presenting unity that does not truly exist. Her words were not rebellious. They were deliberate, and in their calmness lay their force. For the first time in the exchange, the dynamic shifted. Authority expected emotional hesitation, perhaps even retreat under pressure. Instead, they encountered conviction. Conviction is difficult to overpower because it does not escalate. It does not need to. It simply stands. And as she continued to articulate her stance without hostility, the balance of power subtly recalibrated. The conversation was no longer about enforcing compliance, it was about confronting reality. There came a moment, brief but unmistakable, when leadership understood that forcing the issue might fracture more than it fixed. Punishment could confirm division. Public fallout could intensify sympathy in her favor. The calculation changed. What had begun as an effort to end resistance became an exercise in damage limitation. The possibility of compromise, once unthinkable, entered the room. But compromise carries its own risks. To adjust strategy in response to defiance signals flexibility or weakness. And within an institution built on authority, even flexibility must be managed carefully. The standoff did not explode into resolution. It settled into uneasy recognition. Beatrice would not bend, and the palace would have to decide whether control was worth the cost of confrontation. And now, with the dust barely settling, the monarchy faces a question it never expected to ask. 5 minutes ago, a single word "no" ignited a storm inside one of the world's most powerful institutions. But the real story isn't about panic. It's about precedent. If Princess Beatrice can refuse a royal command and stand firm, what does that mean for the future of the monarchy itself? What unfolded was not just a disagreement over strategy. It was a recalibration of expectation. For generations, obedience has been assumed, woven into the identity of those born into the system. Compliance was not debated, it was inherited. Yet with one measured refusal, that assumption has been challenged. The long-term implications stretch far beyond one directive or one evening of tense conversations. They touch the very architecture of authority. Inside palace walls, the question is no longer whether Beatrice will comply. It is whether the old model of unquestioned hierarchy can survive in a world that values transparency and individual conviction. Younger royals are watching closely. They may never say so aloud, but moments like this redefine what feels possible. If boundaries can be drawn without immediate exile, then silence becomes a choice rather than a mandate. That shift alone is transformative. Public perception has already begun to evolve. The image of royal obedience, once synonymous with dignity, is now being re-examined. Many see courage where others see disruption. The narrative is no longer simple. The monarchy is not just a symbol of continuity. It is an institution negotiating modern expectations. And in that negotiation, every act of principled resistance carries influence. Privately, strategies are being reconsidered. Authority, once exercised through command, may need to adapt into persuasion. Leadership may need to listen more carefully before it directs. These are not changes that will be announced in grand speeches. They will be subtle, incremental, perhaps invisible at first. But the conversation has begun. And once a conversation begins within a structure built on certainty, transformation becomes possible. There is also the possibility of quiet reform adjustments behind closed doors designed to prevent future confrontations of this magnitude. Policies may soften. Communication may shift. The institution may evolve not because it was forced to collapse, but because it was compelled to reflect. Sometimes survival requires more than strength, it requires adaptation. At the center of it all stands a single decision rooted in conviction. Courage is rarely loud in royal corridors. It is often restrained, measured, almost invisible. Yet its impact can echo for years. Princess Beatrice did not seek revolution. She sought alignment. But alignment in a system accustomed to conformity can feel revolutionary. And as the palace regains its composure and prepares its next move, one truth lingers beneath the polished surface of stability. Because in a monarchy built on obedience, the most powerful revolution may begin with a single refusal, and tonight, the palace knows it.